the players, the personalities who come from around the world to play professional soccer in the United States.
Go, go, USA! Oh, it's incredible!
In a world where some call it football, football, or soccer, they dare to call it foosball. One thinks New York is blue, the other thinks New York is red. Soccer in America from a German perspective. Let them put some sauerkraut on your hot dog and join them for the Schnitzel Boys USA Hour.
And it's actually, hello, everybody. Hello. A little bit of a sloppy intro. That's on me, because I'm taking over the tech tonight because my Schnitzel brother Bjorn is in Mallorca in Spain.
Oh.
Mallorca is a little Spanish island covered in Germans. I don't know if you know that about Mallorca, Pat. But
well, and with a football team owned by Americans.
Stu Holden, one of them, I believe.
There you go. Yeah, or at least that's the last I heard. Yeah.
Yeah, Leslie sold the steak. But ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Schnitzel Boys. It's a merged hour because of the summertime. It's going to be mainly a USA hour this hour. It's Schnitzel night. It's Monday night. In the chat, please, if you have audio issues, let me know, because I'm running on wild here. Let's see. And we got the chat going on. But we have a guest tonight.
All over our hot dogs, yeah.
Sauerkraut all over. What do you think about that? I tried to do. We do a German one where we put buns on that hamburger, because that's what Americans do to hamburger steak, and then we flip it by being like, we put sauerkraut on that hot dog. It's the American to German, German to the American transference from either angle, you know.
It's good.
And then German Americans have such a place in the U.S. men's national team, from Thomas Dooley through to Malik Tillman and Jermaine Jones and Damian Downs and Jerome Kiesewetter, if you remember him. You know, the list goes on and on. Fabian Johnson. So, you know, there's a little German-American twang there. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Pat Shea.
Oh.
Yeah. He's our honorary Schnitzel boy
back.
Tonight. Yeah, thanks for coming back.
And I am officially a German-American in a way, or unofficially, something like that.
Well,
I was born in Heidelberg on a
no way.
U.S. military. Because my dad was in the army. Yeah. And so I have no recollection of Germany, but I grew up around German stuff and many maps and paintings of Heidelberg. That was the majority of the art in my house growing up. It was something everyone in the family was very fond of, except for me, who didn't remember it at all.
Well, my mom went to college in Heidelberg. It's like Germany's college town. Like the University of Heidelberg is one of Germany's big schools. And I hear it's very, very pretty. Unfortunately, also, like I've been, it's been very brief. But Heidelberg is also where Hoffenheim kind of now sort of their stopping grounds. Because Hoffenheim, I don't know if you know the story of Hoffenheim. Hoffenheim was a little club in a little town called Zinsheim, which is down the street from Heidelberg. And Zinsheim has a population of like 6,000 people. So it's a tiny little German town. But a man in that town founded a huge software company called SAP, or hardware, some sort of computer firm, became a super billionaire, and then put all his money into his local boyhood club, Hoffenheim. And that's why Hoffenheim is like a big top flight club now, because they have a benefactor. Daniel Young in the chat. So Zinsheim and Hoffenheim are tiny towns. So how do they pack a 30,000 seater stadium every week? It's because they're essentially Heidelberg's team. So if you're a Heidelberg student or something, you go off to a Hoffenheim game.
Gotcha. Yeah, I did not. I knew the Hoffenheim story. I did not know the geography of it. So so thank you.
You're very welcome.
And now I have another reason to go. It's funny that there was a connection through my son's youth team, through a dad. A dad had played for Colombia with Pellegrino Matarazzo. And so they were going to they were slipping over to Germany and going to matches. And I know as far as 50+1, it is not the most popular club in Germany.
No.
So yes. And so recently, we like Hoffenheim. Yeah.
Yeah, and also as an American, like, because RB Leipzig is the most hated team. They actually recently had a vote because the 51+ rule is only affects a lot of people. For a club like Bayer Leverkusen or Wolfsburg, they're grandfathered in. They're not affected by the 50+1 rule, where Hoffenheim and RB Leipzig are because they're newer clubs. However, there's a gentleman's agreement to keep it that way, simply because if Bayer Leverkusen, because Bayer Leverkusen and Wolfsburg are subsidized by Bayer Pharmaceuticals and VW Auto Group. So they could spend Cristiano Ronaldo. They could buy 2 Cristiano Ronaldos if they want to. But if they were to do that, then the financial system would be entirely renovated. So they keep it. There's sort of a gentleman's agreement to keep it simple. They've got other rules to follow, other rules to abide by. But that's how Germany go. I've talked about this in the pod before. It's like Bayern Munich needs to be challenged, and Wolfsburg and RB Leipzig and Bayer Leverkusen. These are the clubs that can do it, so they should let them do it. And Bayer Leverkusen, without needing all that fancy cash, ended up doing it last season. So good for them.
Very true.
Good for 2 seasons ago. Not this past season, the one prior, where they won the domestic double. But anyway, we got Daniel Young in the chat. Daniel Young, hello guys. Thanks for coming this evening. Daniel Young, give me a quick audio test. Do I sound okay? I'm always so worried because once I broadcast with like a double, like an echo, and I could never get rid of that echo. So let me actually do a quick audio test. Okay, I sound okay. This is we like the joke. This is a homemade artisanal podcast, like an old ham radio show. It's just out of the basement of a couple of dudes, and we're talking to the people. But anyway, Daniel Young, how are you this evening? Anybody else in the chat, please talk to us. We're here for you. We're going to talk a little Club World Cup tonight, and we're going to talk. Our main topic is the U.S. men's national team. Now I had 3 big games this weekend, because my interest with German clubs and American clubs and the U.S. men's national team, we had a big weekend. Now, the American clubs and Inter Miami already crashed out of the Club World Cup, playing PSG in the round of 16. But then we had 2 German teams. We had a Borussia Dortmund against Real Madrid, and we had a Bayern München against PSG. Now, they were both underdogs. Bayern München maybe more 50-50. Borussia Dortmund definitely the underdog, despite it being a Champions League replay of 2023. And then we had USA-Mexico on Sunday. So I had 3 big games this week, and all of my teams were underdogs. But I don't know about you, Pat. I'm a gambling man. And if you have 3 underdogs, you'd like to hope at least one could have maybe flipped the coin. But that's not what happened. Nobody flipped the coin.
Yeah. I think with the whole Club World Cup thing, it's just been really tricky, and I certainly have high hopes for Fluminense, just because they're a little more used to the to the temperatures and the conditions and everything. That's sort of my only hope for and from the beginning, a Brazilian team has kind of been my only hope for a non-European victor at the end. PSG, the way they've been, it's just been they've been unassailable, unfortunately. And I certainly thought Dortmund might be able to do something against Real, except my kid's such a Real fan. I sort of am not allowed to voice that, even though Dortmund, he knows full well that Dortmund's my favorite club in Europe.
Yeah. But good for you. How did you get to Dortmund? Just because of their philosophy, their club philosophy?
It started it was the 2013 or 2012-2013 Champions League final. With Klopp, and just I loved that match. Really felt standing toe to toe, punching, and not just that, but the semifinals. Was it Dortmund that took out? It was Bayern and Dortmund took out Real and Barcelona, right? Wasn't that the case?
Robert Lewandowski scored 4 goals against Real Madrid, I think, in that one game.
Yeah, right? Brutalized them. Didn't just win, just completely. This is before my kid fell in love with Luka Modric, which is what transformed the house into Real Central. But just watching them stand toe to toe, knowing that the budgets were so preposterously different, knowing that Bayern had already bought Dortmund's best player,
right?
And just done the Bayern thing and come and decimate anyone who has a chance to to defeat them, and I thought it was just such a brilliant match. So that was the beginning, and then you learn about the club philosophy. You learn about the origins of the club, which I absolutely love. And and then it's your favorite team. The next thing you know, you're following every match you can.
Yeah, they're a good team to follow because, just like you said, they're a people's club. They have very humble beginnings, and right now they're fighting Real Madrid. They're fighting Bayern Munich. They're fighting Manchester. Now they're getting in there. They're fighting, and they have no rights to be fighting these clubs. It's just they do such a good job scouting well, bringing youngsters through. They're a great platform for young English players who can't find minutes in the English Premier League, so they bring them through. And then a lot of young Americans too. They've got 3 young Americans right now, if you count Gio Reyna, a youngster still, coming up through the ranks. They're just there to 22 still young, right? Yeah, not like the Fluminense goalkeeper at 44. 44 Fluminense goalkeeper. These guys' grandkids in the crowd watching him. Yeah. But and then if we on this podcast we've had Uli Hesse before. Uli Hesse is a great journalist, and he wrote a really great history book on Borussia Dortmund. I highly recommend. I read it and really got me into Dortmund. And then when I visited Germany last time, I went to Dortmund, did the walk. I walked at the old stadium, and I went to the museum and stuff. I visited the stadium, the Westfalenstadion, really cool stadium to visit. No, it's so good for them. But unfortunately, they couldn't handle Real Madrid. Now, riddle me this, Pat. Is your son going to be an AC Milan aficionado next season with Luka Modric and Christian Pulisic both there playing together?
Yes, he will. And Real will still be his number 1 team.
Real's a magical club. Yeah,
exactly. He's got that thing. I don't know if I told you about. We got stranded at the Charlotte airport last year. Did I tell you about this?
I don't think so. No, tell me.
We spent 3 days. One of those nights sleeping on the floor of the Charlotte airport. We were trying to take the children to Disney World, and that all fell apart. The one saving grace of that trip was when we finally realized, okay, we're stuck in Charlotte and we're not getting down to Orlando. It's just not going to happen. We sort of looked around, and my son noticed. He was like, well, Real's. He didn't notice. He knew because he asked the app. He's like, well, Real's in town, and my wife got on Google and we found out where the hotel was. And we went over and we spent a day hanging out in the hopes of seeing the squad. We saw Roberto Carlos, and my son did. Yeah. I mean, that was before security,
right?
Like realized that they needed to cordon it off. By the time the team bus rolled in, there were hundreds of people in front of that hotel, hundreds of people. But my son got within 70 feet of Luka Modric, nice. Which was just absolutely, absolutely, I'm not going to say life-changing, but it was thrilling for him. And just a day, a day hanging out with...
Right. When you got Luka
exactly.
Modric. Yeah, exactly. Luka Modric is the Mickey Mouse. I tried to see Roberto Carlos at an event last summer, I think, here, the Rose Bowl. Mm-hmm. There was like a meet Roberto Carlos thing before. Like I went to one of the friendly games. I think it was AC Milan versus someone last year. And then there was just a line around out in the parking lot. I stood in line for an hour or two. And then when everything dissipated, I knew it was done with. You had to go to the stage. So I didn't get to see Roberto Carlos at all. But at halftime, I saw him at a distance. So there you go. But if you're going to see any Real Madrid player, might as well be Roberto Carlos, the greatest free kick taker in the history of soccer. Don't at me about that. He's the best. David Beckham shines his shoes when it comes to taking free kicks. Roberto Carlos. I lived in Brazil in the late 90s, so I was there during the very cool period of time in Brazilian football with Roberto Carlos and Ronaldo and Romario and Rivaldo and Roberto and Edmundo. Half of these guys people have forgotten, but they're the best players in the world. Even someone like a Romario. Like recently, there's a TikTok video where Romario had to say whether he was better or the other person was better, and he chose himself every time except with Ronaldo. He said a tie, and when Maradona came up, he sighed. He's like, Maradona's better than me. He's like, Maradona. He just had to admit, like, Maradona is better than me. It was the only player he could admit was better than him was Maradona. And you know what's funny about that? He was right. Each and every single time, I'm like, yeah, man, respect to Romario. Romario was a beast. He was not taken. This is how much an embarrassment of riches Brazil was. During the 2002 World Cup campaign, when I lived there, Ronaldo was injured. R9 always had his knee problems. So Romario took over. And Romario scored so many goals. I saw him score 4 goals against Venezuela in one qualifier match. He's just like, he scored all 4 of them. Great goals. He's a beast. And then, and then when it's time for the World Cup to come, Ronaldo's knee is back. And the coach didn't take Romario with him. He's like, we just needed you for the qualifiers. Now that Ronaldo's back, you can stay back home. And he didn't go. And then Brazil ended up still winning that World Cup. They left one of their best goal scorers of all time back home, and it didn't bother them a bit. They still went and won that World Cup. I mean, Brazil was really great back then. It is sad what's happened to them these days. Look at them now, and it's like, that ain't the Brazil of old. They ain't the Brazil I remember. But anyway, we got Club World Cup. But by the way, I forgot. So what were Real Madrid doing in Charlotte? They were doing a friendly there in Charlotte 2 summers ago.
It was one of those summer friendlies last year. No, this recent, or a year ago.
Oh, a year ago. Yeah, it's, as a dude from North Carolina.
Not tell you what.
As a guy from North Carolina, it blows my mind that Real Madrid. Like when I was there in North Carolina, soccer was not what it is today, and it's just funny to see Real Madrid go and pack a Charlotte. It's like, ooh, times have changed. Good for them. I'm all about it. I love that the South has taken soccer.
Yeah,
I love what Atlanta United has done and what Nashville.
Yeah.
A good friend of mine's from Nashville. How big of a city Nashville has and stuff, and the Carolinas now. But anyway, we got the FIFA Club World Cup. We got Bayern Munich. They lost the game, and they lost Jamal Musiala for 4 to 5 months in a horrific tackle from Donnarumma. Going in there, Manuel Neuer was very critical of him. It's been a little bit of a talking point about should he have done that? Should he have gone and apologized to him after the fact? Apparently, the teammates are telling Donnarumma to go talk to him. He hasn't done that yet. But if you're a club in Europe, the European clubs are already debating whether they should even be here. And then if you're going to be here, might as well win it. But if you're here and you win nothing but get 5 games more tired and lose your star player, then that's maybe not the best example of what your summer should have been for a Bayern Munich. And it ended up crashing out kind of hard a little bit. I was hoping they could win this whole dang thing, but they just lost one of their players. And that's kind of why the Europeans don't want to be here. Bayern Munich had that happen to them. So it is what it is. But I, for one, am enjoying the tournament. You seem to be enjoying the tournament. You went to the Real Madrid Salzburg game?
Yes. Again, it was a big graduation, 8th grade graduation present for my kids / birthday present, and it was a real. It's funny. It was better than a summer friendly. I'll put it that way.
Yeah.
It wasn't necessarily. The tournament doesn't have gravity at this point, and maybe it will one day. It is. It's a little meatier than the what was it, the International Champions Cup or the Audi Cup or whatever they've done year by year, this sort of invite only, although in the end this is also pretty much an invite only sort of tournament. The one challenge with that match, I mean, it was a great match. The goals that Real scored were really, really high quality.
What was the score? Remind me. It was. I thought that was a 3-0 game. Oh, it was 3-0. Okay, good. Yeah.
It was 3-0. Yeah, Salzburg didn't get a lot of the ball, and they did not get a lot of the crowd. Unfortunately, it was kind of.
Say. You don't say an obscure Austrian club run by a soda company doesn't have a huge following here in the United States.
Yeah,
or it should even be here. The fact they're even here is kind of a talking point. I don't even know what they're doing here, but I'm glad they're here. They got to use their New York Red Bulls, their brother training facility, because their brothers were right there in New Jersey. So I think they were based at the New York Red Bulls camp. So that's good for maybe Red Bulls you could get to train with them a couple days and stuff. But still, it's just one of those funny quirks.
A lot of funny quirks, and it takes away again from the gravity of the tournament. If the funny quirk that somehow the Supporters Shield winner from the year before the tournament in MLS, that tournament gets in, CONCACAF Champions Cup winner might get in. It's these weird little invites that have taken a lot of the competitive meat off of the tournament. And it is still better than a lot of what we get in the U.S. in the summers, and we're coming down to the end of it now, and there were exciting matches over the weekend. So it's better, it's better. Is it great? No, but and I do get really entertained by all of the European players and coaches talking about how somehow it's not legitimate football if it's hot or if the grass is
right.
They were complaining at MetLife it was too short, which was unique.
Yeah, the Europeans like to complain. It's funny. Again, the Brazilians are coming in with more matches played because they play a lot more. Brazil plays when it's hot. Brazil has long flights. Like the Brazilian clubs don't, like the South Americans in general don't care about any of this stuff because that's what they're used to. The Europeans are soft. Like everything about the operation is ideal for football, which is a good thing. The pitch is always a certain way. Traveling is non-existent. The resources are there. The food is there. Like playing for a European club, likely an elite European club, is like flying first class all the time, right? It's built for But that's just not the way it is outside of Europe. The biggest things DPs complain about here are conditions and flights. And America is a little bit of a harder country. It's a huge country. We've got problems we can't solve. And that's what I love about the Brazilians and also the Mexicans and the Argentinians. It's like they don't care about any of that stuff. They do that crap too. I mean, I'm sure, for Sao Paulo club to go up to the Amazon to play a game and back. I mean, that's probably 3 flights. It's definitely not a first-class hotel, but they don't care. They're there to play. In fact, and Brazilians, especially in South America, they need more income, so they play lots of games.
Yeah.
And I think a club a couple of years ago was fined because they played 2 games in one day. They played a cup game in the morning and they played a league game at night, and they just had to take the fine and do it because that's all scheduling would allow. That's South America for you. Europe doesn't have that. Europe doesn't have anything like that. Europe has people complaining about everything and So that's been funny. But this has been a great tournament to watch the Brazilians thrive, and it's been a great tournament to watch. We can finally see what a club like Al Hilal can do with their budgets. Like Al Hilal has the same makeup that Inter Miami does, but Inter Miami can only spend on 4 players, where Al Hilal spent on all 9 players they bought. And like their wage bills, by the way, I looked it up, is insane. Their lowest paid foreigners make $15 million a year, which is an MLS record. I mean, only 2 players in MLS history have ever made that year. So like their Koulibaly, I think he's making like $80 million a year or something. And then they just signed Ronaldo to $400 million a year. I don't know if you saw that. They've got money that nobody's got. And the whole MLS can learn lessons from that. It's like, not really.
Yeah.
You can't pay that much money for that stuff.
But
pretty much what I'm trying to say is like we've got foreigners too, but our foreigners are not the same as their foreigners. Our foreigners are youngsters. They're unproven. They all have a little damage to them. You can spend on a prime foreigner once or twice, maybe 3 times in a club, but that's about it. Where a Saudi club can show they can have 9 prime foreigners on the starting lineup.
Yeah. No, it's just my old Chicago Fire guy, John Duran. I don't know if you saw that today. He's after how many months in Saudi Arabia? 6 months.
Right.
He's on to new. He's getting loaned to Fenerbahce now. So,
good for him. Good for him.
Yeah.
So he's not. This is how I loop I am. He's not Aston Villa anymore.
Come in. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, come in, loop him around, send him on out. Yeah.
Get your cash. No, 100%. But anyway, so that's the FIFA Club World Cup.
Yeah.
That's one tournament that happened this summer. It's fun. It's exciting. It's probably bigger for the non-Europeans. But like you said, I'd much rather watch this than the summer friendlies. Summer friendlies I almost ignore in their entirety. But there was another tournament this summer. 3 Americans couldn't play in it because they were at the FIFA Club World Cup. 2 of those 3 got almost no minutes. I think one got none, the other got 12, and the other was benched for an important game. And I think they're all transfer listed, looking for new clubs anyway. That's neither here nor there. We had the Gold Cup. we had the U.S. men's national team made up of players who were not in the FIFA Club World Cup, made up of players who did not want to come, and then made up of players who were not brought in. So there's three categories of where are they's, right? There's three categories. And then we have a selected team of people that the coach called in, and some were like, sure. But then plenty were like, okay. It's like Max Arfston, okay. Alex Freeman, I'm like, all right. Matty Freeze, okay. Patrick Agyemang, Patrick Agyemang, okay. So anyway, we just finished that tournament. Mexico won 2-1. I was disappointed, but I was not surprised because Mexico, like Canada and like the other teams, brought their A game. Santi Jimenez was on the field. Their AC Milan star was there. Our AC Milan stars were not. Who's left? What do you got there? What do you got?
And in the final, just to point out, Santi Jimenez was not on the field through most of the final because Raul Jimenez was, and so they've got a guy, the guy being counted on at AC Milan, wasn't even able to make it onto the field until late substitution, which says a lot to their striker depth. You also mentioned Patrick Agyemang. So striker depth is going to be an interesting conversation over the next year.
I mean, there's a few positions with depth, and it's always the same ones because it's usually our number 9s, our back wingers, and then now the new conversation, and by new I mean the last 5 years now, is goalkeeper, right? Who's our goalkeeper? But let's just start with your thoughts, Pat. Give me an overall thoughts on Gold Cup and stuff like that.
On the tournament as a whole, it's so fun. My big thought about Gold Cup is that I hear a lot of people saying that, that we need to be playing more competitive teams. And I agree with that 100%. And the issue is that with FIFA adding, not necessarily, I mean, Gold Cup has been here for, a good long while at this point, but adding Nations League, we just don't get an opportunity to have friendlies against high quality opposition, right? And we saw what happened when we did with this squad before Gold Cup started. Now, I'd love to see this squad play Turkey and Switzerland again, having gone through what they just went through, because I do definitely think they improved. But to me, the big thing with Gold Cup is if we can't get out and play those friendlies, there has to be some sort of investment into getting the teams that we do play more developed, in getting resources into areas, because the football cultures are unquestionable. I mean, Guatemala, Pochettino was talking about Guatemala, and yes, what an amazing culture, and they don't have the resources necessarily to develop players in a fully professional way. And I'm to the point where I'm like, well, that needs to happen, because you're who we get to play. Costa Rica, you're who we get to play. So anything that we can do to make Costa Rica, Jamaica, Panama, Guatemala in this case, and what a fantastic was it Guatemala or Honduras that upset Canada?
It's Guatemala. They beat them in penalties.
It's Guatemala, right? Yeah. Anything that we can get to develop players in those countries, because it's who we get to play. So that was that. This squad, I will say, no one expected a lot, and I really, really, our A team was not closing out games.
Right.
Nations, obviously the Panama thing that happened, and there was a lot of apathy. And they weren't closing out games, and this group came through, scored way too early in the final. But I mean, if you can, that's obviously a point of debate. But generally, they came through and they held on and they closed out games, and that I really, really, really want to see if we can still do that when the big name players who in some cases just wanted a rest. I shouldn't say in one case. Honestly, everyone else was injured or called in for the club.
Well, what
for
about Yunus Musa? I think he took some heat for off
Oh
Yunus
yeah,
Musa too.
Musa,
Yunus Musa also just pulled
Tess.
off for quote unquote personal reasons. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah,
there was one or two. There might have been a third, but I think Pulisic was the poster boy, but Yunus Musa wasn't there either.
that's
You know,
true. And
uh,
Tessman, I know, had just had a baby, and maybe he just wasn't called, but
I think Tessman just wasn't called.
he'd
I
been in the
think he's like
plans.
he doesn't. When someone asked him why he wasn't going, he's like, I don't know. I never got a phone call. So I think he
Oh
probably
well.
would have been there.
Okay.
But yeah, I agree with you. I think this team did grow into the tournament, and I did like to. I really liked their behavior towards the end of it.
Yeah.
They were there for each other. I think they were playing hard. Now their game management could have been a little bit because Guatemala they were
Hmm.
dominating 20 minutes in, but then the remaining 70 minutes they were chasing the game, and it's
Yeah.
like, come on now, it's Guatemala, you know. And also to your point, I think that's what MLS is doing. MLS since they've started has just made the entire region better, right? Because Guatemala, half of the Guatemalan starting lineup were all American-born players. El Salvador under Hugo Perez was also a lot of American-born players. I think a lot of these
True.
countries, and I'm sure the Caribbean countries do this too. I know Jamaica brings in a lot of English-born players,
Yeah.
and they like. There's just great opportunities for American-born players of that heritage to go play for those
Mhm.
national teams, and also for their players like Carlos Ruiz made his name at the LA Galaxy, you know, the Guatemala El Pescadito. So I think MLS does a
Yeah.
really good job for the Trinidads and the Jamaicas and the Guatemalas and the Hondurases, you know, which makes our whole region more competitive, which is a good thing, 100%.
Yeah.
What it does for the U.S. men's national team is, I guess, a little bit up for debate these days. It's definitely a good starting point for our players, and as of late has been a really good launch pad, which is nice. We see Patrick Agyemang apparently is headed to the championship after this tournament, and also Damian Downs, even though he's an MLS guy, he's heading to Southampton, which is interesting to me. You know, and then you had Aidan Morris up in the championship, who also wasn't called in for some reason, and you know, it's been a real launching point for Americans to go to Europe, which is what we want. I think that's the idea, right? But there's also this weird animosity towards the league from a big part of the fan base. They don't want any MLS players at all, which I'm already unsubscribed to. I have no respect for that kind of opinion. But like it makes you think in this tournament let's maybe start at the beginning. I, for one, didn't love the roster. What are your thoughts on the roster in general? Like the roster that Mauricio Pochettino and his gang called in. What are your thoughts on the roster in the first place? Let's just start at the beginning.
You know, I try not to read too much into it because in the end, you sort of don't know what his motivations were. They're definitely, like we talked about, Tessman, Morris. These are players who certainly he's been looking at in the matches leading up to this, and they're not there. So was he just experimenting? Or how much, what was the percentage of let's experiment with this guy, and let's really try and trust this other guy. So I mean, the lack of pace has been brought up by wiser people than me, and that definitely is a concern. There's a couple of, I mean, I love Walker Zimmerman. My wife is nuts for Walker Zimmerman. She's like,
Okay.
That's the guy. That's the guy I want our kids emulating. At least the way he defends, the way he, which is great. And so I love that he was there. Is he really getting looked at for the World Cup? And if he isn't, is there a center back we could bring in to give that look to? So it was confusing. I'll be honest, it was confusing, and nothing Pochettino has said has allayed that confusion.
Right.
I think that's been a theme throughout the tournament. Yeah. What were your thoughts?
Yeah. No, I'm right there with you. I think Mauricio, we're really concerned, if I can speak for the fan base and a lot of experts and wiser folks, we're a little concerned on Mauricio Pochettino's level of focus and understanding of the player pool and of just the U.S. soccer scene in general. I think we're looking for clues here, and the clues aren't great. You know, I think he called in a January camp, and I think he really leaned on his boys. He called in for January camp. And if you ask me, I don't think he's been looking super closely to Alejandro Zendejas, or I don't think he's been looking very closely to any of our players in the championship. I think he ignored that almost in its entirety. And there's just a lot of players he hasn't been looking, like Caleb Wiley, for instance. I would like to have seen a little more of him this summer. And yeah, our center backs, is Miles Robinson injured? Is he there? I think about the Miles Robinson thing.
I'm pretty sure
I know I think he's been recovering from injury.
You're absolutely right.
I'd like to have seen a little more of him. And just like you said, Walker Zimmerman's good, but I don't think he's really going to be there next summer. Tim Ream, I believe, will be, by the way. I thought he was gone, but Tim Ream is our best center back, bar none. He was great. He was probably one of our best, if not best player at the 2022 World Cup, in my opinion. The dude was a rock-solid guy. And I think he's about to be a rock-solid dude next summer, too. Let's hope he stays healthy. Let's hope he aged like a fine wine. In his 20s, he was in the championship, didn't get much play at all with the national team. Then his 30s hit, and all of a sudden, he's our star center back. Good for him. And he started playing in the Prem with Fulham, and he just aged like a fine wine. So I'm glad he's there. But, we have a problem where a lot of our foreign-based players have been underperforming. For instance, CCV should be a better center back. But whenever he puts on that U.S. jersey, he's just a pile of dung. I don't know what's going on with him. Johnny Cardozo, same thing. I wanted to see him this summer play for us. He just went to Atletico Madrid for $30 million. Real Betis star scored a great brace against Real Madrid. He plays this U.S. jersey. He can't even do a back pass. I'm like, what's going on here? Like, is there a disconnect? There's just this weird thing where players underperform wearing the U.S. jersey. That's sort of been, I think, a theme over the last couple of years, I think. And it's been nice that this summer Malik Tillman kind of broke out of that shell because he kind of also underperformed. But this summer he bossed it. He became the player we wanted him to become when he was given that role, and I think he showed up. But anyway, going back to my original assessment of the roster, I did not like the roster. I looked at Max Arfsten and Alex Freeman and Patrick Agyemang as what are they doing here? Much less. And then I'm a big John Tolkien fan. John Tolkien earned his keep. He should have been a left back. He only came in as a replacement for an injured Serginho Dest, and then he barely played all tournament. It's like, why is Arfsten playing over Tolkien? Tolkien earned that spot. Tolkien's proved himself a little more, and Tolkien, in my opinion, is vastly more capable. But Arfsten played. So
yeah,
I thought the experimental choices ended up proving nothing other than he brought in bad players. Like his roster was not. He did not redeem himself with his roster choices, or is my thoughts for this summer.
Yeah. It's funny. I think we're Red Bulls guys, as has been established, and I think Tolkien is very close to our hearts in the performances that he's that we've gotten to see right in front of us. And Arfsten, he got a couple of assists. He scored a goal. Like, he did a bunch of good stuff. Last night, I felt there was a real issue. I mean, the stat, we got no corners. We won no corners last night. None, not a one. And looking back at it, there was an awful lot of turning inside, just above the top of the box. No one tried to get down to the end line and get a corner and get a cross in, which is, where you're going to get a situation where you might win a corner. And it felt like on both sides there was just that lack of will to get there. And John Tolkien does that. He will get down to the end line from time to time, and his left-footed service is really, really nice. And so it would have been nice to see.
John Tolkien's weakness is his defending. He's good. He's great going forward, coming back. But if you had to compare him against a Max Arfsten, he's a level above. Because Max Arfsten, quote unquote, was man of the match in Costa Rica. Yeah, he was involved in all 4 goals. He created the first 2 own goals for us, and then redeemed himself and earned 2 goals back. So I like to see that. Good for him to redeem himself. Yeah. But we should have never been in that situation in the first place. I look at a Max Arfsten and Alex Freeman, and I look at them being part of our Olympic program right now. They're not senior national team players right now. They're U23 guys. And for whatever reason, they were chosen to be our senior team players this summer.
And I'm not sure. I mean, none of them is starting above Anthony Robinson, to be as clear as possible. But I'm not sure if Tolkien. I mean, Tolkien was an Olympic player last summer. It's just
Hmm.
I'd have loved to see a little more of him. All the subs. I mean, that was another question that I think we're
Right.
all going to have for the managers. All the subs seemed so late.
Right.
It
Very
seemed
late.
like there just wasn't an opportunity to do a thing. And yeah,
And a little odd, like at the
Arson
final, and
also,
like in the final when
yeah,
Damian Downs goes in for Luca De La Torre, I'm like, huh? Damian Downs over Luca De La Torre.
yeah,
So he made a top two, and I guess he put Diego Luna deeper, even deeper, I believe, because Diego Luna was totally isolated in the game last night. And it was just like that move didn't do much for us at all. And it was, and
yeah.
obviously they had problems communicating. There was that moment where I believe it went right past Damian Downs, and he was just there, just bounced past him, right? And he's just like, someone kick it, but nobody just kicked the ball. And it comes from a youth. It comes from an inexperience. It comes from the fact that Ajiman is still very raw. And I'm just like, should we be having raw players? Like we have other guys. Like I don't know about you, but I trust a Brandon Vasquez up top much more than a Patrick Ajiman, to be 100% honest with you. I trust another big consternation for me was I do believe it's Josh Sargent's time to shine. I know he hasn't scored in 5 years. However, I was there. I went to the Nations League. If it wasn't for a silly offside, he scored that goal for us in
Mm,
March.
yeah,
And this year
yeah,
has been his coming out party. He's one of those youngsters they put too much pressure on young. He went to the championship, and he really broke out of his shell this year. This year became the confident number 9 we knew was inside of him. Therefore, we as a national team program need to harness that and give him another shot. But quote unquote, for sporting reasons, he was omitted from the squad this summer. And,
yeah.
you know, your guess is as good as
And
mine.
yeah, no, I mean, I think the thing is, Ajiman's incredibly interesting, and I completely agree. Like, it feels like Pochettino looked at Sargent twice,
Right.
um,
I think in the
and
Nations League camp, I think, yeah.
yeah, and yeah, and then he calls in a bunch of January camp guys, and Ajiman, like you definitely you see how much upside there can be.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I get a little concerned, and I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled that a guy who played D3 college soccer
Mm-hmm.
has found his way into the national team, and potentially, well, we'll see who's healthy in a year. But he's definitely in Pochettino's heart. You get the sense
Right.
that Pochettino sees something that he wants to work with there.
Right.
I also, it feels like there are elements of his game that are the things that raising youth soccer players, like the people who, I try not to listen to quote unquote experts all too much,
Mm-hmm.
but the things that they're like, that needs to be locked in before a kid's 12.
Mm-hmm.
Those are exactly the things, if we're talking about an ability to to receive a ball cleanly. Those are the things that I'm not seeing from Patrick Ajiman,
Mm-hmm.
and I hope conventional wisdom is wrong. And I
Right.
generally believe that the quote unquote youth soccer experts are wrong about many things, right?
Right.
And so I hope Pochettino is brighter than I am. At the same time, it would have been nice to see Josh Sargent or Brandon Vasquez, who have both showed up, and you never doubt their effort. So if Malik Tillman has this time to work out and find his feet with this group,
Right.
or find his
Right.
feet with this coaching staff, why couldn't we, try a number 9 who can turn on people and score in a whole bunch of different ways.
And he's just a little bit more effective. I mean, in addition to that, we saw very little from Brian White. Again, I'm a New York Rebels boy like you. I'm very proud of our alumni. We have many, one of them being Brian White, the one that got away. And he got very few minutes at this World Cup. Granted, maybe it's a style thing. I know Haji Wright was injured. I think he was carrying an injury, so I think that's why his time was limited. I felt
Which
Haji
was interesting.
definitely, yeah.
Just with that Damian Downs sub,
Mm,
that just seems so much to me like he wants him to come in and be Haji Wright.
Right. Right. Exactly. That
at
was
that
100% a
moment.
Haji Wright sub. Yeah, 100%.
Yeah,
Haji Wright's a
yeah,
winger in addition to being a forward. Yeah, but again, he didn't call in any wingers. That was also kind of a criticism of his roster. He had, I think, Quinn Sullivan was his only natural winger entire roster. I think because he played Jack McGlynn as a winger, but that's not really what he plays natively for his club. And the Haji Wright
and
is
then
a winger, but that's also not exactly what he plays for Coventry. That
yeah,
I know of. I don't think. I guess Brendan Aronson's also a winger. Uh, but how much of that he's been playing with Leeds? So his wingers are a little bit on the lower side, and this is a team dependent on wingers. So it's another one of those questions of the roster, I think.
yeah. And McGlynn, again, another guy who's going to turn inside before he gets to the top of the box.
Right,
If you put him on the right,
right,
which you
which they
did,
did, yeah,
McGlynn wants to load up that left foot, and we just never got penetration.
right. It worked against Trinidad, but didn't work against anybody else.
Right,
Yeah, hundred
right.
percent. And who are we going to be playing next summer? It's not going to be Trinidad.
Mm.
So yeah, no, 100%. I'm right there with you. Now there are some players. There's definitely players I wanted to see, and I'm wondering if the Josh Sargent thing is part of my theory of there's a behind the scenes thing going on right now with the U.S. men's
Mm-hmm.
national team. I think as Mexico and Canada have their A guys there, and Jesse Marsh and Javier Aguirre are well established, I think Mauricio Pochettino is still trying to lay down some ground rules. And if I didn't know any better, I would say kind of the biggest theme of this whole summer is that the U.S. coaching staff is trying to be a little bit more disciplinary with their practices, and
Yeah.
Christian Pulisic and the more comfortable boys, it's called Germany, it's called the bling bling boys, but like the crew of guys who go to Florida and go fishing on their time off and play golf, those crew of guys.
Yeah.
I think they're kind of being challenged a little bit. And that could be why your Tanner Testmans and your Josh Sargents weren't here this summer, because I think Poch didn't like their work ethic at the March camp and just the work ethic in general. And with Pulisic demanding, because originally Pulisic wanted to only play the friendlies and leave, and Poch made it very
Right.
clear that he's the coach. And that's not how things work. He doesn't need to understand; he just needs to listen. I think Poch didn't like the fact that Pulisic had an interview at all. Yeah, and
Yeah.
and I think there's a behind the scenes going on of the more veteran guys being a little too comfortable, and Poch is trying to make sure they are not comfortable. He is thwarting
Yeah.
journalist questions about Pulisic being there. I think there was a journalist that asked him, maybe Henry Bushnell or one of them, and Pochettino's like, "Oh, you've already made the squad selection for me." It's like we don't know who's going to be there. Like, Poch is being very clear that no spot's guaranteed. He doesn't want anybody to be comfortable. He wants everybody to earn their spot. I think that very much is what Poch is doing. Is it being effective? Time will tell. Do I agree with that philosophy? 100%. I really do. And I am on Team Poch in this seeming thing that's going on. Like no one said it out loud, but there's clues, And if that's what's happening, I'm Team Poch. I don't know about you, but I'm definitely Team Poch on that.
I am too, with one caveat, which is has he communicated this to the players?
Right.
Because I do think a lot of it under Berhalter, his original thing was, create the squad as a place where you get relief from the pressures of Europe. This is your brotherhood. We're going to have each other's backs, and the friendships that have developed off of that have been fantastic. They've been inspiring. Coming into the last World Cup, it was inspiring. And then, yes, we got to the point where it seemed indulgent, and it seemed, like they were too comfortable, right? And so I love that Pochettino has been like, no, we have a year to the World Cup. This is and we've seen that. I feel like the symptom of that is, again, this group, which is not as talented with their feet as the top group, was able to close out matches. And I felt like the emotional center of if I'm looking at again, like looking at what was going on at the Nations League, and did we have something? We had friendlies after that too, right?
I think just
weren't closing stuff out.
Just the Switzerland-Turkey friendlies, I think, right?
Oh, okay, yeah. Okay. I felt like there was something, one way or another. again, I'll go back to we weren't closing things out,
Mhm.
and this group was able to close it out, albeit against not as talented opposition. They were able to close stuff out, and so I'm pro Pochettino. I just hope he had that conversation to say, "Hey, we've gotten way too complacent around here. You guys have gotten way too complacent. We need to change how we're entering this." You know,
Right.
and
Yeah,
and
let's hope he's not
you
just doing that via
hear
the
a little
press.
bit,
Yeah.
yeah,
Sorry to be
because you hear a
interrupted.
little
Yeah.
bit about, yeah, no, just like Dest had not spoken with Pochettino, right? He'd spoken with members of the staff as he was recovering, as he was just, getting to play again with PSV. He hadn't gotten to speak with Pochettino, and so like, how did if there was anything about the intensity that we want our training camp to be at, they've got to know that going in. They've got to say, okay, I agree. And if we jumped right past that because he had assumptions of what a national team should be like, because he will remind us again and again and again, he's from Argentina. Yeah. It's fun between him and, honestly, and Nico Cantor. I don't know if you watch morning footy that much.
A little bit.
There's just this, oh, but in Argentina, you have to understand.
Right. That's a whole other thing. I mean, but there's been a whole...
in Miami, dude.
I know. Nico's from
Sorry.
Miami. I know. No, there's a whole also. I mean, I can go two ways with this. One, there is a whole thing of Pochettino being really smug with the press about like talking about what real fans are like. Hopes the U.S. gets real fans, that kind of crap.
Oh,
and it's
yeah.
like,
what the hell is
you're
that?
just learning. You're just learning. All right, America's its own beast. United States, America is the only country in the world where the home team is always the away team, and that's because America is a very unique place, and everybody from the world comes here and works here. It's a melting pot. It's just American thing. As an American, you should know that. Pochettino does not. Like you're a family man that buys tickets. Are you going to spend $150 a pop for a family of 4 to go down and see USA versus Guatemala because you can see USA all year long? No. For the Guatemalans, it's a big deal for them. They go. Should they be paying that much? No, but CONCACAF knows to squeeze every dime out of those guys, so they do.
Yeah.
The lack of a U.S. support base is because the powers that be at U.S. Soccer and CONCACAF have no interest in marketing to us. They make more money marketing the away team, so they do it. It's easier for them. But Pochettino doesn't know that because he's an Argentinian dude. The other thing about that, and this is the Brazilian of me coming out, Brazilians and Argentinians are like the French of South America. The behavior of Argentinians are very, very, very proud of themselves and very proud of their behavior and very proud of themselves. There's an old Brazilian joke. And again, no disrespect to Argentinians. I love you guys. It's just an old Brazilian joke.
Yeah.
In Brazil, if you want to make a lot of money, buy an Argentinian for what they're worth and sell them for what they think they're worth. That's how you make bank. It's an old Brazilian joke. So I just want to put that out there. So when Argentinians talk the way they do, for those of you who don't know, the Argentinians are they're like the Europeans of South America. They're very proud of themselves and their culture and their heritage. So we're going to hear a lot of that. So just heads up.
Which they have every right to be.
Right.
It's just, that when you're criticizing the fans or a lot of us have been here when you didn't have a league, or you didn't have, you're going to empty stadiums, but you were there, you were there, and you recognized the people around you cared just as deeply as any fans anywhere. Even if it was echoing around the place, or you're sitting on aluminum bleachers and watching, through the NFL lines. And folks growing up, I guess this generation's always had a place where they could play professionally. But you go back a couple of generations, and that wasn't a guarantee, not by any means,
No.
And
No.
so
that's stuff that bothers me.
There's stuff I'd love to share with him.
Right, exactly. It's not. But anyway. But so moving forward, let's just get maybe our last thoughts out here. The roster was weird. It's probably based on a message he's trying to communicate. And like you said, let's hope he's being very clear about it, not just talking to the press. I think what we want to see from Putch is him to be a little bit more involved with his players behind the scenes, and we want to see less of it play out in the press. The mentality was good. I agree with you. We had a great mentality. I think moving forward, let's hope our players who are more skilled and more experienced can plug into that mentality. Let's hope they say yes, sir, and no, sir, and they figure out what's going on, and they plug in that mentality moving forward. Because the sad reality is we only have a handful of short camps left of friendlies until the World Cup. And our opposition, we have to be very creative because a lot of those windows, the best opposition is unavailable due to Nations League and qualifiers and whatnot. So it's the other big thing is this summer was supposed to be a big preparation summer, and you saw Canada and Mexico doing that. We did not do that. So we have to be, how much do we actually get out of this summer? You know what I mean? That's sort of a big question now. But some players showed up. Malik Tillman, thumbs up. You know, what are your thoughts on Matty Freeze? People are talking about maybe Matty Freeze is the World Cup next summer. What are your thoughts on that?
I love Matt Turner, and Matt Freeze played pretty much. Was he mistake free? No, he wasn't mistake free, right? No. There was that one clearance where he was under pressure, and but he generally made the stops you'd hope he'd make. He didn't make a lot of stops that that were surprises, but I felt comfortable with him back there. It's just he is not Brad Friedel or Casey Keller or Tim Howard or Tony Meola.
No, and am I harsh? That second goal, that header goal, should you have done better on that at the final? It kind of went right past. He just stood there, went right past him. Should you have done better with that? Do you think, or am I being harsh? Like I'm a spoiled German man.
Yeah,
so like Mano Anoia would have smacked that right out of the goal. Like that wouldn't have gone past Mano Anoia. But Mano Anoia is also the greatest goalkeeper of his generation. So maybe I'm being a little harsh. But like, should he have done a little better with that? Maybe would have Matt Turner done better with that? Probably not. So maybe I'm being a little unfair. And kind of like the old Bjorn used to say this with Jesse Zardes. It's like it's not his fault that no one's better than him. And same with Matt Freeze. It's not his fault that no other goalkeeper is better than him. Like he is who he is
right now,
and there's no better alternative, really.
I don't think the door is shut right now, and that's talking about prepping for next summer. That would have been great for the door to be shut in some of these spots on the field. And they're not. Maybe Malik Tillman, Tillman, and it may be the sort of thing that when folks come back together, they've got to learn from some of the guys who were on this Gold Cup squad, as opposed to incorporating, okay, Diego Luna, come under my shoulder.
Right.
I think Pochettino wants to set up some of these players to lead in an emotional way, and I hope that all works out.
Yeah. No, I agree. I think Malik Tillman and Diego Luna earned their keep to be part of our winger team, part of our offense somehow, whether it's starting or coming off the bench. I think Chris Richards and Tim Ream are our back two. That's the back two right there. If Tim Ream stays healthy, I think there you go.
Oh, by the way, Robinson was on the roster last night. Yeah.
I don't know if he's injured. Maybe he's carrying an injury, but he didn't get much minutes either. But it's also part of Poch's thing where he subs late and he sticks to his guns. Like he never switched anybody up. It was the same starting lineup for 3 games. I think our left, like Joe Scally was not here this summer. That's also maybe part of the Pulisic bling bling boys thing. I definitely felt as on paper he had a lot of value to offer this Gold Cup squad. And I think he was missed competitively. With Matty Freeze, maybe it's the kind of guy who comes off the bench before penalties. Because his penalty performance against Costa Rica was really this highlight of the tournament.
Yeah.
And to match Keylor Navas and then to essentially beat Keylor Navas at the penalty, good for him. Good for him. So maybe he's a dude that comes off the bench before penalties. Who knows?
Yeah.
And then Tyler Adams wasn't. Tyler Adams is still a little injured, isn't he? There's something up with Tyler Adams.
He wasn't the impactful player that we're used to seeing at any point. Yeah,
I think he was dealing with a little bit of a knock. Hopefully he becomes his best. Johnny Cardozo, I mean, I'm ready to throw him in the trash. I mean, I don't know what his deal is. But he's just not playing for us. I don't know what's going on. Can he break out of his shell?
Yeah.
who knows? But as of right now, I don't no interest in seeing him play again, really.
Well, if
And then
he's
yeah,
yeah,
what were you saying?
we'll see what the year brings. He's going to be playing for Simeone, so I don't think you can do that without a certain amount of grit, and so yeah, we'll see what he shows, and maybe he finds a way back in, but it didn't look
Luca
good
Luca De
this
La
tournament. Yeah.
Torre, time and time again, proves he's just a solid player. He's really good at taking the ball from one side of the field and just bringing it up to the other side of the field. He's just, I think Luca De La Torre belongs. I think he showed himself really well this summer. I think, not
Yeah.
amazing, but he's a solid dude, and he's doing great work with San Diego FC. They're leading the league right now, and he's a key player there. And I think Luca De La Torre, I think, had a pretty good summer.
Yeah, absolutely.
To be positive. Cool. Yeah. So what are your thoughts moving forward? Give me your big thoughts before we get out of here.
Big thoughts. I think actually I just shared. I think the idea is to have this kind of resilient core, this resilient fight, and so can the players who missed come in and I don't want to say and be humble, but try and learn some of the lessons that the group came together. Because I feel like if we played Turkey again now on this side of this tournament, it would look better. Even the
Hopefully.
Switzerland match would look better, not good necessarily, but better. Yeah. And so I feel like there was momentum. It stinks that the momentum wasn't with the guys that we're expecting to see next year.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I mean, those friendlies were backwards. I mean, why are your two toughest games the first two games you play in the summer? That's a little weird. Yeah, but it is what it is. It is what it happened. Yeah. We do need to be playing teams like that, but like you said, we should be more with our B team. We need to be more prepared to play teams like that. But I think you're right. I think what we're looking forward to in the future is mentality. At the March window, we have that little clip, and again, this goes to what you're saying. How much are they communicating off the field? Of Poch wanting to sub off Pulisic, and Pulisic waves him away and says, "No, I'm doing this free kick." I don't know if you remember that moment.
No.
Pulisic was supposed to be subbed off, and he said no to the sub. I'm going to do this free kick. I'll come off the field after the free kick. And Pochettino was like putting his hands up, and it's just like, and I don't like that behavior. And also when Pulisic did that interview, I don't know if you saw that hour-long interview on CBS, it really rubbed me the wrong way, man. It's just like, this dude is a little entitled. So I do, if I can shoot a shot here, I know he's young and he's confident, he's cocky. It kind of comes with the territory. I'm not super surprised, but I do hope that Pochettino is setting, like you said, I do hope the Pochettino, let's call it the mentality shift, grows successful. But also, like you said, I think Poch needs to maybe adjust his approach and be a little more involved with his players behind the scenes that we're seeing.
Yeah.
But I think the big goal is here. It's mentality. We're looking at mentality. Skills we got kind of as much as we can get. It's about that mentality. Can we get them falling in line? Can we get them saying yes sir to the coach? Can we get them being brothers together and playing together? I think that's the project we got looking forward here. And let's hope it's a success.
Yeah.
Let's hope for $6 million a year. It better be.
Got a year.
All right.
We've got a year. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much, Pat. I don't think I have the outro music today because my Ninja Bjorn is out. So we're just going to have to pretend to listen to outro music. But ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Schnitzel Boys Monday night. Tune in every Monday night. Thanks again to my guest, Pat Shea. Thank you to the fans. And if you're listening at home, tell your friends and fam, give a like and a subscribe, and on YouTube, on iTunes, to do the review, all the good stuff to get our words out there. And let's hope the U.S. have a successful year, and let's hope the U.S. can frickin' bring home the bronze next summer. I'm going for bronze. Let's do the bronze. All right. Tschüss. Bis nächste Woche.